We have in the United States something called the Copyright Society, which is an organization that basically promotes intellectual exchange amongst people in the copyright area. And if you went to a Copyright Society, an important meeting 20 years ago, you would find that copyright was considered an extremely automatically valuable thing. You didn't even have to discuss why it was important and necessary. Turn the clock ahead 15 years, and you go to a Copyright Society meeting, and half the conversation there is about trying to limit authors' rights and limit copyright and why it's an infringement on freedom, and something I pretty violently disagree with. So it was shocking then. It's no longer shocking, because if you think about who is interested in protection for creative works being weak, then you start to look at the internet, where people don't want to pay for it. You look at broadcasting, even though they own important copyrights. Cable companies, they don't want to pay for it. Hardware manufacturers are interested in supporting the internet business and not our business. And of course, there's the telecoms that have to pay for your works if you're a creative person. All these people put together, think about Google, think about Microsoft. If you talk about lobbying in Brussels, your typical organization representing creative interests in Brussels may have 1 or 2 full-time people. The last time I counted, Microsoft had over 20. It'll give you an idea. So it was shocking to me 5-10 years ago. It's now just something we as people working in this field need to try to combat. And may I say that it's to a certain extent our own fault. The music industry, the record industry, the film industry didn't really pay attention in the very beginning to the possibilities of licensing their works. So what happened? People found ways to use them for free. The problem in Spain is very similar to the problem in other countries, in the sense that the people who have interests in the fields where creative content is created don't always have similar points of view about what to do about it or how to handle it. So the problem that you have, let's say Sky is obviously in the music area, is that different elements of the music area don't necessarily always agree. They see themselves often as in opposition about issues. You have music publishers, you have songwriters, you have societies, you have the record companies. That is a very difficult alliance. And the simple fact that the various components of the music business have had difficulty pulling themselves together on common issues is one of the reasons that they are weakest, right? I mean, even in Spain, you see criticism from Sky, from certain newspaper interests that are aligned with certain political interests. Forgive me, but what has that got to do with songwriting? And what has that got to do with what Sky's job is to enhance the creative arts and to protect songwriters and publishers' rights? It's like two people with guns shooting at each other's heads instead of at the enemy. If you turn the clock back, in this case 30, 40 years, you see Spain as a very forward-looking legislative environment for creative people. Spain is very, very proud of its songwriting community, very proud of its music and its lyrics. But you turn the clock, it had a longer term of copyright than most countries in Europe. It created works written by two people as favorably as possible, as favorably as any country in Europe. Now, trying to get legislation that enhances that through the Parliament, it's when you consider the power of the broadcasting, of the internet service providers, of the telephone companies, of the newspapers who don't seem to know which side to be on. I mean, they have creative content and they have other issues. So what's left? There's us in the music business, the book publishers, the film industry, which compared to Microsoft is tiny, and the record industry. That's all you've got. It's not much. My brother's, who was the music publisher's first job, was working for ASCAP as a licensing representative. What that meant was, and he had Brooklyn as his turf, it meant that he had to go into bars and explain to the owner of the bar why he had to pay $500 or $1,500 or $1,000 for an ASCAP license. Doesn't make you very popular. And that's the problem. There's no difference. I mean, I don't mean to make this insulting. There's no difference between that uninformed bar owner in Brooklyn and Google in that respect. Think about YouTube. Anything good that happens is going to require a harmony within the various creative industries, which is very difficult. Look, for example, France put into place this Hadopi law, which was a notice takedown for illegal file sharing. If you were caught, you got a notice. If you caught again, you had a second notice. By the third time, you lost your internet service. What's happening? Violent opposition. They may even lose the law. That was the first law of its kind in the Western area that I'm aware of. Look what happened here. We had laws like that that were going through the House of Representatives and the Senate, the two houses of the American Congress. They're called PIPA and SOPA. What happened? The internet went on strike, literally for a day. The internet companies effectively blocked and blackened the internet for a day. That scared everybody to death. And those laws got buried. So my feeling is we all have to work together, and it's very difficult. Political working to enhance, to effectuate laws is a very complicated process. You have to figure out a number of things. You have to figure out what the primary people who have power in the parliamentary field, who they are, what their interests are, and how you can meet those interests. And what you cannot have is one group of creators coming in and saying, I want X, and another group of creators coming in, or creative content owners coming in and saying, I want Y, and some third group coming in and saying, I want Z. Forget it, you're losing. I also think there is an enormous educational problem with the public. The public basically doesn't understand, at least the public that grew up with the internet does not understand why they should pay for content. That is a big problem. As I said, we created it ourselves to a certain extent. Overcoming it is going to take a long time and step by step by step. But it's very important that the internet work together.